Hi there, and welcome back to LNF Educational Associates. We're a group of advocates here to share information on special education with you. So, today we're going to talk about federal law IDEA. Now, federal law IDEA is the special education law that sort of acts as the framework or the skeleton for all the states across the United States to then take, interpret, and create their own policies and procedures off of. So if you saw my previous video, I did a introduction to IDEA where we briefly touched upon the 6 different pillars. But for today, we're going to zoom in on pillar 1, which is parent and student participation. Again, as I just said, IDEA is a federally mandated special education laws, and it provides guidance across 6 different pillars. Again, we're only going to talk today about pillar number 1, which is parent and student participation. So, parent and student participation is a really big part of special education. Parents and students have the right to be involved in all decision making processes related to their child's education or their own, including the development and implementation of the IEP. So, what does that mean? Well, that means that you, as parents and your child at a specific age, are parts of the IEP team. Now, that's not just somebody who is in the background that says, yeah, that sounds good, or I have a question, but I might be too nervous. No, you're an equal member of the IEP team. Just as every single other professional sitting around the table, parents and students, once they reach a certain age, are equal members of the IEP team. And it is incredibly crucial to have the input from parents and students in the IEP team. That is the best way we can make the program as comprehensive as possible. So let's start off by talking about this parents' rights. So, what does IDA really say about parent rights? Well, check out this little flow chart here. I sort of put it in order of how you typically see the process go. But IDEA provides guidance around all of these 6 different sort of milestones throughout the special education process. So, with evaluation, IDEA says that they need consent for evaluations and reevaluations. Well, what does that mean? That means that you, as a parent, can either accept or deny if a school wants to assess your child. The second piece right here, eligibility. So we look at eligibility, and that's typically developed from the outcome of the evaluations, looking at the potential disabilities that may be at hand, and then determining if that does impact the ability to make education progress. Our third one down here is IEP development. So, parent participation is active in the IEP development, right? Not only is there a spot within the IEP that states for parent concerns, but the input is also really important for reviewing and for revising any of the potential services, accommodations, modifications that may be included in that plan. The fourth part here in our little flow chart is placement. So once your student is determined eligible for special education, and once you start to develop that IEP, you then can look back as a team, including the parent, and say, where is the most appropriate placement for this educational service to be done? Is that in the general education class? Does it require some in general education, some in small group? Is it a whole substantially separate program that's all small grouping? Is that what's most appropriate? Or is it that the district can't meet that child's needs at all, and we need to start looking at some more specialized programs, which we call out of district placement? The second and last piece on my little flow chart here is progress monitoring. So, progress monitoring is exactly what it sounds like, right? You're reviewing the progress that has gone on throughout that IEP period, and that is not just academic growth; that is also social emotional growth. Part of what I really love about the new IEP here in Massachusetts is there's a big focus on social emotional development as well. And the last piece here is dispute resolution. So IDEA started sort of put the groundwork out there for ways that again, each state can interpret differently, but fair ways that families can have a role and support in dispute resolution. Well, what does that mean? That is, if you as a parent and or student at a certain age are not agreeing with what the district is proposing for services, there are different options for dispute resolution. So according to the federal government, that's right to participate in mediation or due process hearings should that need to come up. Now, again, each state can sort of take that and build upon it, right? So, in the state of Massachusetts, we have multiple different routes for dispute resolution. But at the bare minimum, we know it's going to offer what the federal law calls for. So, we also talked about today that this is about parent, but also student participation, right? Again, just as a parent is an equal member of that educational team, so is the student once they federally, there's a federal law, right, are age 14 or 16. And I mentioned federal law because in the state of Massachusetts, it's a little bit different. Well, I should say, excuse me, in the state of Massachusetts, we're age 14. Federally, the law is age 16. And that's why I have the difference there. But by age 14, even throughout the federal law, it says students are start to be involved throughout the IEP process, right? They're bringing forward ideas and reflections of their own learning. And by 16, the federal regulations and guidelines state that students should be involved in not only the development of their IEP, but also a transition plan for life after high school. Again, every state's a little different. Here in the state of Massachusetts, we actually start transition planning at age 14 within the IEP. So, again, this is sort of the bare minimum, and then each state can then take and build upon that from there. But I wanted to talk really quickly about the importance in student perspective in IEP development, right? It is clearly understood. I'm sure many of the people here watching me today are parents. We know why our voice is important at that table, right? We have raised our children. We have spent many, many years and we've seen patterns, we've seen difficulties, strengths, weaknesses, you name it. We've seen it over that period of time. But when your child gets to a certain level of development and their ability to self reflect sort of kicks in, they now can bring a very important perspective to the table. So you can sort of see here, I've outlined six of the sort of main ways that research shows us that students bring an important perspective. But I think just as humanity, we can understand why that makes sense, right? Think of us as adults. We know what makes us comfortable, we know what works best, and we know what does not. So again, bringing the kiddo to the table, they are able to talk about their learning styles, their specific strengths and weaknesses from their perspective. Interestingly enough, as an education advocate, there's many times where maybe the school has a view of the student's strengths and weaknesses, maybe the parent has another perspective, and then the student has a separate perspective as well. And that's really important to come together and to draw conclusions of how can we help support this child in the best way possible to ensure that by post secondary life, they've developed those skills necessary to be successful. And on the second side, you can see here they can bring their aspirations, right? What do they want to do with their life post secondary, after that K-12 education is done? Where do they see their life from there? And how can we help them get there? They also can share effective strategies, right? Myself, I was a special education teacher for 10 years before becoming an educational advocate. And I had a little strategy box and I'd pull my ideas out of it. But every single team meeting, I would always say, ultimately, it needs to be the student's choice because a strategy that may work for me may not work for another person and vice versa. So it is incredibly important to let the student have input on what is working for them and what is not. And last but absolutely not least, the student's able to come forward to the table and share their goals. Again, sort of like the aspirations, it may not be long term for, life planning. It could be a short-term goal or it could be a long-term goal. But the beauty in the student bringing that to the table is that the professionals can put their heads together in helping the child achieve that. So again, we're talking about IDEA, Pillar 1, student and parent participation. And I want to talk about some key elements of this and why it is so important, why the federal government, mandated this as part of their special education regulation. They put it together. The three main pieces here is that informed consent, right? There needs to be the parent or guardian needs to be informed and to give consent for a district or an education agency to assess their child, to give services to their child, to take away services from their child, right? And we'll talk a lot more in my videos to come about each one of these in depth. But for today, Just understanding that this was one of the key elements that really was brought about by this regulation. The second piece is access to information. As parents, you can access your child's educational records anytime you want. And that's really important, right? As an educational advocate, I often will say to families, can you write to your district and request a copy of all of your educational records? That gives me the opportunity to look through the child's education as a whole and draw conclusions about where they may be struggling. Maybe there is some good interventions in place, but are they working? And using the ability to look over time and compare data to see, is there really effective progress being made? And last but not least, IDEA really protects parents and students around communication. So communication is so incredibly important, right? The research out there about family engagement and family school partnerships that are strong and the high impact that has on students' academic and social emotional functioning is outstanding, right? And as an educational advocate, that's something I'm very passionate about. Is that not only do all the members of the team play an equal role, but they respect one another and they utilize strong forms of communication. And that's between parents, educators, and the student themselves. Again, so why did we come together and make all of these regulations and guidelines? Well, we just talked about that, right? We had those key elements that really ultimately was to level the playing field and to include the student and the family in these important discussions. Because not only is it your right to be included, but it has some serious benefits. So let's talk about that. What are the benefits of a parent and a student having an equal voice at that table? Well, research shows improved educational outcomes. In and of itself, why do we have students go to school every day? We want them to learn academics. We want them to develop functional skills and adaptive skills to be successful later in life. We want them to develop effective social emotional strategies. I could go on and on, but all of that falls under the word educational. Often teams get hung up on education and think educational progress. Oh, that's just grades. Absolutely not. It's academic progress for sure, but it's also the social, emotional, functional, behavioral, and I go on. The second piece here is again, I just mentioned this strong parent school relationships. The research behind strong parent school relationships is outstanding. You can't deny it. When we look at schools, whether they're private schools, public schools, or any educational agency that you can think of, if we look at student performance, the schools that are performing at their best have the strongest parent school relationships because it becomes a community and their sense of belonging and trust that's built within. And last but not least, something that I can say is really important. I taught middle school and high school during my time as a special education teacher, and boy, is this last one important. Increase student motivation. And let's be real, it's important for us as adults. If you've seen my videos before now, you've heard me say this before, but I'm sorry, I'm going to say it again for my newcomers. I do not enjoy running. I wish that I enjoyed running. More than anything, do I wish that I was a runner, but I'm not a runner. If I'm going to go out and run, it's to become healthier and to lose weight and to just develop a better habit, but it's hard for me. If I was to go out and run every single day and then go to the doctor and the doctor says, well, you're getting less healthy. And if I was putting on weight, right, essentially, if I wasn't seeing the fruits of my labor, of course, I would throw in the towel. And it's the same way, especially for students with disabilities, for all students, really, but especially for students with disabilities, right? We already know that this is difficult. So we really have to be creative about increasing student motivation. And what better way to do that than to have the student and the parent be active stakeholders in the process? So, again, as I just said, parents, students, you are essential partners of your IEP team. Don't let yourself be anything less than that. As always, if you need help navigating the incredibly diverse and complicated waters of special education, myself, I am the lead education advocate here at LNF Educational Associates, but my team as well is a group of amazing professionals who have left the field of special education to advocate for a great cause. You can find information about us on the web at www.lfeducational.com. You can email us at lfeducational@gmail.com, Or again, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe to me here on YouTube, but also come check us out on Facebook. We post a lot of some of the videos that we do here, and we also post flyers and just different supportive resources for parents and students alike. So again, thank you for popping in today, and I hope to see you again soon. Bye-bye.